And we're live.
Welcome, everybody. We're here for Strange Women Lying in Ponds. Distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Welcome, Lit RPG family. We're here with four absolutely incredible authors that I am so looking forward to discussing in their governments that they've built in their worlds. And it is going to be rocking. So stick around with us. We're here to hear from these wonderful authors. So I'm going to start with Rachel. Introduce yourself and what you're working on.
Hello, I'm Rachel A. Cooper. I co author with Aoife Y, who's been on a couple of other panels already. And together, we've written series before, Wolf and Flame. We're working on a Titan's Core, which is dropping on Royal Road now. And I think that was all the question. It's a lit RPG isekai tower climber.
Yep. Rose, let's hear from you.
My turn. Rose Reynolds. I write as TJ Reynolds and Atlas Kane. I'm around. You should read some stuff. Woo.
Jeffrey?
Hi, guys. I'm Jeffrey Falcon Lowe. I tend to write your fun dungeon core stuff, and the current thing I'm working on is Mecha Dungeon Apocalypse on Royal Road. Look forward to getting that done for submissions to publishers next week. So fingers crossed.
Sweet. Then we're on to the man, the myth, the baldy, Jez.
Definitely the baldy. I'll go with that one. Hello, everybody. I'm Jez Caggio. I'm pretty much into dark lit RPG primarily, and alcohol and violence. That's pretty much it. But I'm very glad to be here with these wonderful people.
Oh, I'm so glad we're here. All right, so we're gonna get into it very quick. So we obviously know that building a world is incredibly difficult. I mean, that that is one of those things that I have yet to figure out how to do, which is why my book is not out there. But on that same aspect, it's got to be even more difficult to build a government in that world. rules that apply specifically into your world, but also, are there going to be times where your world might interact with the rules that the real world is involved with? So on that, how has your experiences in life helped you to develop a system of government in your books? I'm going to start with Jeff on this.
So when you say life, you mean specific life experiences?
A little bit. I've noticed that we've got a large portion of authors that have worked in the military, and so they've seen how the government in the real world has affected, and I wanted to get an idea of that because
Jez, this means when's the last time you were locked up? Tell us about that.
I'm not talking about the last time I got locked up, dude. We said that we would not talk about this. Remember, they pressed charges, and they said if word gets out, well, yeah, it's government.
So to answer your question, Kyle, in that regard, I don't have too much practical living experience, I guess. If we're talking about just crafting experience and project management, that's definitely something I've brought into what I make for my world. But honestly, most of the government and system work experience is just from my my enjoyment of science, logic, physics, economics, all of that, and then also just practical reading experience for the most part, seeing how other people connect the world, both fiction and nonfiction, not to mention just watching how governments and economy works in real life.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to hop over to Rose.
Okay, I'll give you a serious answer since I'm going to be bullshitting half the time.
Okay,
Okay,
it's
so
bullshit. It's what we do.
I'm not going to go the military route. This just people in power have power, but we're making a tip of the iceberg. When you're world building, do not try to flesh out the whole world. Then you're in the like make the map as big as the terrain, like myth, right? You've all heard the story. I hope it's cool. The emperor wanted a bigger map, and then eventually it was as big as the thing. Like you can't do that. So you just function on the knowledge that certain things do remain the same. Like officials are going to be a part of this. You can name the officials different things. You can link the government to religion or more toward culture or more toward commerce, but it's going to kind of have the same bones. So yeah, I guess that's what real life stuff informs my books, is just the kind of like common sense stuff of there's certain similarities, right? There's going to be someone that carries a cudgel and tells people to shut up or what to do or pay their taxes. So those things sort of stay even if the names change.
Absolutely. Jez.
I'll definitely agree with that. For me, the systems of governance, I always like to view it as the character themselves isn't going to know all of it. So you can reveal it step by step as they come more and more into contact with these different structures. And then if you've made a mistake, which you have if you lag it like I do, you can then have them discover that, oh no, what they believed earlier on was totally wrong. It was based on data they had. So that's a good way of doing it that I've found personally. But it's also, I've been fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look at it, to meet quite a few politicians. And that includes Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. And of all the people I've ever met in my entire life, the person that was least suited to that position from my personal interactions with him was that man. And not because of anything else, just because he was so and just jerky and unstable in the persona that he presented to me. I mean, it could have been completely an entire act, or it could have been a bad day, or anything else. But in meeting somebody, that really crystallized for me the fact that the people who are at the top are the people who, in my opinion, are the least deserving of being at the top. They're just the most underhanded or whatever that have taken the opportunity and have got up there. And Terry Pratchett has, in his Guards series, has this wonderful line about what politician means. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. I mean, it's been bastardized a lot, and it was made up by him. It was never actually policeman of the city and so on. It was just his interpretation of it, and a great line. But he talks about the policeman being the man of the polis and is there to enact the proper decorum that should be seen as a city dweller. And so what's a politician? And when you go down that route, it's somebody that tries to stab you in the back and take over. And that little twist on it always sort of gave me the idea of you just can't trust the fuckers. But they're always going to be up there, and you will have genuine, honest people who've gotten to that position and are honest and desperately trying to make a difference. But you're also, because of human nature, going to have at least half again as many that are complete bastards who are in it to line their own pockets. So I like to play off on that, because I also build a lot of the noble structure in, and viewing it as those people that I do know that are very, very rich from their own backgrounds, from family money, are typically very badly behaved at times. Let's just say that.
Absolutely. And Rachel.
I was gonna say, yeah. You can also have like your characters come in, like maybe they come in automatically, just kind of questioning the politics. Um, and I would say for us, whenever we were writing the story, highlights of just kind of current political things are kind of RSS feeds and things like that coming up can influence things or provide inspiration for the characters and how they interact with like the different power of using the system with the government that's in place in the world. Aoife also, she has a background in studying history, and so we kind of based some of our system on the real life parliament had upper and lower levels in one of our series. So things like that. So we just always tweak it so it's not recognizable to true facts.
Gotcha. So as an author, have you had to bend your rules you've made in your book in order to move your story forward? And if so, was it part of the plot originally, or does it involve a whole lot of pantsing? I'm going to go with Jez because he's smiling up there.
Well, for me, I will say I'm a complete pantser. I've tried plotting out the stories, and I actually not long ago came as a perfect example. Book 6. I was writing. I decided I need to get back into the world. I need to plan this. I haven't done anything in this world for a while. I'm gonna plot out the whole book. And when I got about a quarter of the way through book 7, I found that plot because after I'd written it, I never again looked at it. So that's how much attention I play to plans. So it means that a lot of the time I create the situation exactly as the character sees it, and then sometimes I decide actually this guy needs to be a better person than he is, and I'll write in why that's happened. But I don't plan out who they are. The way that they come into it is just the way that it feels right to me at the time. So it often means that because I have a massive distrust of politicians, that they are typically viewed as scumbags. And then sometimes one comes in and genuinely throws a curveball and is the honest guy who's trying to make a difference. And I like to do that because people now associate all of my characters with hating politicians. So just to fuck with them, I like to throw someone in just to. But yeah, I have had to change stories quite a bit at times when I'm going through because it wasn't planned.
I can appreciate that. What about you, Rachel?
So I would say yes, in a way. We have one of our main characters is basically he's seeing how the system he's trying to hack the system so that way he can gain more opportunity to rise to kind of climb up the tower. So we had a character already set in place, but we ended up having to we did kind of pants our way to try and figure out, how can he hack the system with this character, find a loophole in the rules of there's a lich master who kind of controls this tower. And so we had to find a loophole to work around this power that he controls. And I think that was part of the fun of it, kind of brainstorming back and forth with Aoife, is figuring out different ways. Okay, what can we do to kind of break the system that this lich built up?
Thanks. What about you, Jeff?
So I wouldn't say I've ever really had to bend my rule of government in any of my books, but that's more a consequence of just the general way I write. The closest would probably be Biodungeon, which has the main character uh, at some point was connected to power, and then through circumstances became an orphan and a beggar, essentially. Uh, but the way I write is that generally I like to pants the first book. I like to write the first draft because that's the most fun in my opinion. It's you're letting your creativity flow. You're letting the world come to you without any limitations. And then I usually go back in the first edit, which is generally why it takes a little longer, and I sort of refine the story and I make a world Bible to just go alongside with what I write. So the system of government usually isn't one of the first things I think about. It's something I sort of build up and I create as a consequence of what I've already written that makes sense in the world that I've already started to form. So with Biodungeon, for instance, I had the foundation with the Slime Dungeon series that this is going to be in the North. It's going to be in the monarchy. It's going to be in the more pro technology as opposed to pro magic society of humans. And then from there, I sort of refined it to like the local government. And then the next book, right now, we have more of the 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 medieval version of the federal government, I guess, the royalty and the nobles, and then just refine that with each further book.
Okay. What about you, Rose?
It's my turn. Yeah, I signed up for this panel because it's titled "Strange Women Lying in Ponds Distributing Swords." So I was excited about the quote, and I was also thinking hot chicks with swords. That was going to be the topic. But this is a very serious panel. And I just want to point out the fact that Jez is also full of shit like me. So we got to shake it up a little, guys.
It's true.
Don't worry, I brought
Let's
something
bring the fucking
specifically
energy.
for
What's
you.
going on here?
I brought specifically sword that I carved myself out of hickory.
I don't see the hot chick though, Jeff. That's the part.
That's you.
I know.
Jez slinks off camera to get whiskey.
Oh, real sword.
There we go.
Well, here, you know what, Jez? I was going to come up eventually. It's like the real stuff, real version of sword.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
so I
beautiful
didn't know,
thing.
Kyle, whenever if you were going to ask, it's like, why do you have
I
the
would've-
fake versus the real? So like this
I
one
would've
is
asked.
just evenly weighted. This one is not. So now I have to change my book because I can't use it properly.
Now the boys are comparing their sticks. The boys are showing off their sticks. This is great.
Oh, what's he got
That's
this
sort
time?
of the point, isn't
Really
it?
impressed.
Oh God, is that a?
Oh my god. Yeah, see, very serious.
Very
Kyle,
serious.
what is the fucking question? What's going on here? Can you just
Okay. As an author, have you had to bend your rules of your government in order to move your story forward? And if so, was part of the plot was that part of the plot originally, or did a whole heck of a lot of pantsing come involved?
I feel like what you're really asking is, have we accidentally fucked up our stories? And I think everyone says yes. We've all
That's the
definitely
question.
broken the
Exactly.
rules on
Thank you, Rose.
accident, and then later you go, oh, and you put a little like stamp on there to amend that problem. Yeah, it happens, and sometimes, yeah, with pantsing and plotting, you either pants and have more revision on the back end, or you plot and you have more of the work in the beginning. But it seems to be the same to me. It's just a reorganization of the little shit. So, yeah.
Make it up as you
So
go
on
along.
that
Much more fun.
same note, Rose, is like, I promise I was going to get into the strange women lying in ponds.
Hot chicks doing it.
That's right. So we've seen a lot in our genre that certain magical items or creatures, especially lately and I've looked at deck building, and have influenced the systems of government. Like, we know that decks influence the government in so many ways, and we know that creatures have absolutely changed governments. Have you specifically created a magical or item or creature that has affected the worlds you built, and how has that interacted with your world that it makes it intrinsic to the story?
Yeah, I'm going to come at this from a different angle. I think religion is a very big part of all of my books, just because I've seen, like, I went to war that was like essentially founded on weird aftermath of religious ideology, and my family is just sort of entrenched in it. So I know how much someone's belief system shapes the way they see the world and what they're willing to do in that world. So yeah, I've had like living gods gods that take on avatars, those sorts of things. And I think that's a fun way of showing how, because I don't know, I think like a living god that's like walking and breathing is magic. Like that's not something that we have here. So I would count that as like in First Fist, Leshra is very active in the foundation of her sect. So that was fun for me. The sect leader is still the one that makes the decisions, but they gain all of their power through their deity. So, yeah.
So they can't afford to fuck off the deity.
Absolutely.
It's a very good point, though. I mean, if you've got all these different creatures that are moving around that are in and of themselves the source of power, whether that's governmental power, whether that's physical power, emotional, magical, whatever it is, any being that is sufficiently powerful is going to warp the world around them. They're going to have these effects. So when you start creating things like, for example, they're going out of the city, and there's a fuck ton of monsters. Right. Well, let's stop it there and go, why would there be monsters outside of the city? Is it a case of the local city doesn't care? Maybe the city lord's going, fuck this shit, that's your problem, I'm not leaving the city. Is it a case of, there isn't a government, like a large governmental organization there to try and bring in an army? Because why would you let monsters be ruling about? So you've got to bring in all these kind of things and think logically through it, because you can't have a civilization like the Roman Empire, for example, and then expect it to be totally okay to have monsters that are reachable by your noobs to go out and train in the forest that's just half a mile away. Because eventually they're going to start going onto the road, they're going to start getting in the way of the legions going to go, fuck this shit, wipe them all out. So you've got to factor in all these different places that can create a balancing act, I find.
Oh, absolutely.
Shameless plug of Legion, by the way. That was terrible, Jazz. Come on, man.
I didn't even think about that. I was thinking Roman legions, genuinely. Oh, Legion.
So shameless. What about you, Rachel?
So I think for our system, whenever we were at least starting to create it, one of the things that influenced it was just thinking about resources in general. So we set up a multi-tier level, almost like a class system. So you've got your higher kind of noble elite status, a middle kind of grade, and then a lower level subclass system. And then, so when we were thinking about items, different things that could affect it, one of the things that came about was the access to a certain resource. So accessing a curator where the people could go, if they had elite access, they could go up to this person anytime, open up a trade window, times unlimited for them. But if you're on the lower kind of class system, there's only a specific trade window, very short amount of time that you can access this person. Can't ever go to them in person. I'll add to that, though, a magical item that we did create was specifically like a time crystal, and having that kind of dispersed throughout the tower. But using that not only for a loot item, but having it change the dynamics of the characters and the different factions. So you have people hoarding them, you have people stealing them. So I think these types of magical creatures or items are pretty helpful in changing how it can influence the government system and what was put into play with the rules.
Oh, absolutely. And this one, especially for me, is interesting because I want to hear Jeff's version of this, because he writes Dungeon Core, and obviously the dungeons have an effect on the government. So, what's your thoughts on it, Jeff?
So many thoughts, all of them unwritten, unfortunately. So I've got two sort of thoughts on that. In my universe, the dungeons themselves are physical things, right? They're crystal cores at their center. So that, by its nature, is an item that somebody could acquire and theoretically do things with that. So I know I'm not writing currently in the Slime Dungeon universe. However, I have plenty of things I've started to continue to grow the universe. And for instance, one of them is a dungeon economics book, and that is teaching sort of economics the way Biodungeon teaches immunology. But the idea of the dungeon supporting this small town's economy and then growing it, and then the second book will be communism, and the third book will be capitalism, and yada yada. But the way that dungeons affect the universe is that they are a resource point, that they're a location where you could either get practical training for fighting, or you could acquire otherwise limited natural resources in the form of monster parts or drops, or in case of the slime dungeon, a mine. So then they become important to be controlled, things that can be stolen, things that can be destroyed for, other political purposes. So a lot of the world has sort of developed with not only mountain ranges and rivers and forests as sort of boundaries and land masses, but also where there are the most important dungeons to be located. For instance, in the north, in Bosril, it's the Labyrinth City, and there's like the 8 great dungeons in the Slime Dungeon universe. Then the Labyrinth is on the verge of becoming the 9th. It's essentially the city has grown around the Labyrinth, so everything, right, government, economy, is based on this forever going down Labyrinth dungeon. That's where the Adventurers Guild was founded. That's where a lot of the technology has been concentrated with the Academy. So I would say that government is not only something that you can base your story around, but your government can be something that becomes as a result of your story as well. I don't want to keep talking, but I could probably keep blabbering away.
No, you're absolutely fine, Jeff.
No, I see exactly what you're saying there. I should have thought about it. If you don't mind me jumping back in again there, Kyle.
No, go for it, please.
I've literally just covered, I hadn't even thought about this before, I've literally just covered this as part of Book 8 in the small spoiler if anybody is following it. They've made contact with some of the remaining civilized people in the country that are part of the original government and part of the original army. As such, there's the moral quandary as well of, some of these people are scumbags, of course, and some of them are completely respectable, good people, but they're looking at this because they have access now to a dungeon, and they're like, well, do we abandon our morals to stab this person in the back to get access to the dungeon for the greater good? Because we have this huge population of people who are dying, who don't have food, don't have medicine, don't have all these things. Do I sacrifice my personal morals to take the dungeon from X to then protect these people? And when you look at it from that point of view, that's a terrible thing to do. But I would say personally, from my point of view, yeah, it's the right thing to do. Because regardless of anything else, to try and protect, say, 100,000 people for the loss of 1,000, it's a shitty situation, but it's a decision that you'd have to seriously consider. And then realizing that I was going down this route because of the way the story builds naturally for me, was like, shit, I'm going to have to build a way around this, because otherwise I've got pitched battles that I hadn't intended. And there's no way that logically these survivors would permit this opportunity to pass them by. And so it changes the whole dynamic of an area. So, yeah, I don't know why the hell I didn't think of that before, but yeah, the item for government, yeah, totally.
The sci-fi equivalent of that is like the Fallout series with all the vaults.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we had another good question from, I apologize if I get this wrong, Joe Effinger?
It's pronounced E-fucker.
Oh, that fucker. Yeah.
That's perfect. So he asked, royalty, politics, or both? What do you find most creative to write?
Royalty, just no question. Because you can come up with reasons why the royals haven't been disposed yet. But politics, you have to come up with why it even works.
Well, but they're the same thing. It's just the type of politics, right? This sort of ties into something I was going to throw in too, which is cool. Linking it back to like lit RPG and progression fantasy, we're not just epic fantasy. We're even more centered on these like the concept of individuals becoming insanely powerful. So some do become the gods that rule the world. Others become system managers or like world admins, or like the observer in the sky that we don't even see other than prologues and shit. And then other ones, they become just sort of government officials or the king, which is interesting because then once you have power, then you have resources. So those officials sometimes just become more and more powerful because they're feeding themselves like beast cores or whatever the progression item is, or it's just might is right and they walk in there and steal it from each other and it's a continual war. So
The double quote is absolute power corrupts absolutely, and
Yeah.
then the other side of that is at some point absolute power shows who the individual really is.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I use royalty and sort of and government systems slightly differently because being English, well, we're used to the fact that we have the royal family, but we're also used to beyond the symbol. They really have they have power that could be used once, because even at this stage, they could turn around and go, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to stand up for X fight or X right or whatever it is," and they could make a big stink, and they could probably sway whatever argument it is once, because after that they would be out of, people would go, no, this isn't what we want out of you anymore, you're supposed to be figurehead, and they would be gone. So we see powers here slightly differently because we see the governmental side, but that's going to be replaced in 4 years, or more accurately, when
Or less.
Bob, yeah, exactly, when Bob's been found out he's been knobbing his secretary or whatever, and he's going to be out the window, he's going to be out the window, she's going to be down the street. So they're all changing all the time, and the royal family's there in the middle going, oh fuck, just don't make eye contact. So, so I see the politics of that side quite a lot. But I will quickly say, though, there's a series by David Eddings called The Tamuli, I believe it is. And
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with this one, but he has a wonderful government system in there that he uses on this tiny little island that's basically paradise. And it is a tiny island. It's part of the empire, very, very protected. And there's nothing there except people who really enjoy their lives because it's such a little paradise. But for their government, what they do is they say, you, my son, have been put forward as our next prime minister. And that person, all their belongings are immediately taken off them and sold. And that money is put into the government and into the funds. The tax systems are all kept at the exact same level, cannot be changed. And so the only way that this person who is now in charge, who's now under guard and can't run away, can't escape, is going to have any of the stuff that he's had all of his life back is if he makes sure the government makes an honest profit. And I always liked that because it was like, yeah. Sorry,
almost like I would say it sounds almost cruel.
Yeah.
That's
But
genius.
I love it.
What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I think I agree. Like with both of them, royalty and politics, you can get like there's influence in both. So like if you think about how much power one has, can the royalty corrupt the politics? You see that where maybe they're buying the law enforcement, they're saying what the sheriff can and can't do. And so the politics and even that safety and security of what the civilians might be considered can be bought and corrupt. So.
Oh, absolutely. So we know that in King Arthur, he didn't care to be king. He didn't want it. And he just pulled the sword from the stone and just ended up getting it. And it's because of that stupid lady in the lake. I mean, I love her, but it's one of those things.
We're back. We went full circle, guys. This is poetic now.
All right, Jazz, pull up the sword.
Hot chick.
But on that same point, what is y'all's opinion on those who have fallen into a position of government just because they were either the strongest or because they were forced to be in charge, but they don't want it? I mean, we tend to see that a lot in lit RPG. Like these characters become OP and then suddenly they're forced into being in charge because guess what? They're the strongest. So obviously, they're the smart ones, even though they're not qualified for it. So, what is y'all's opinions on that? And I mean, this is just I thought.
But let's be fair here. Most politicians aren't qualified either.
Oh yeah, they're the least qualified. It was all. Yeah,
True.
I typically try and balance my characters like that because my main character is often because of the way that I write and the way that I've grown up, the way that I live my life. I tend to write meathead characters to a certain degree, and it's because I like straightforward. I like there we go. I like popcorn fiction. You know, it's not going to win awards. It's not going to be high and mighty, and people are going to look up to it for years. But it's something you can sit down with, just like a Marvel movie, and go, "That was great." You're not going to discuss the politics of it afterwards. You're just going to go, "Fuck it, I enjoyed that." And that's pretty much what I write. But when you're saying about the other side of power, the balance of power, because they have put themselves in this position, they have taken control. That's often why I build the female character or the maid character to be the yin and yang, because they're typically the other side of the coin. Because you can't have, ex homonymous hero that is, so fantastically strong and is straight off to battle, and then everybody else go, "Oh, now what do we do? Fuck knows. Well, let's just sit here and let it all fall apart." You have to have somebody in charge. It has to be somebody that can be trusted to be in charge and that has a reason to be there. And that's why I create the characters that I do for that. So
That's just really cool. I'm gonna go historical now. That's
Please,
why the
Rosie.
Spartan gender roles were as they were.
Yep.
Their entire, like almost their entire male population was in serving or had served. So while they're doing their thing, which is almost constant, the women were holding office, managing money, and very much empowered in a way that is just really interesting. So I think that's cool, because if you're building these worlds off of superhero dudes, essentially you need something like that. You need to have admin characters to do things.
Mhm.
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
everyone's just going to be like, well, what the fuck do we do when he's fighting the barbarians? Like, what do we do now? We just chill? That was a really good point, Jez.
what?
The most important thing when it comes to, for reasons of government, I find this is just big picture world stuff when I'm making a world Bible, is that there are the most basic jobs out there are the farmer, the people who, make food, and then the people who take the food, which can just be bandits. But not everybody can be a farmer because you can't do everything yourself. So
Oh,
everybody has other
absolutely.
things that creates economy, and then to manage people is why somebody has to be in charge. So, like Rose said, somebody goes off. What do the mice play when the cat's away? Kind of logic. So you set up a system that sort of manages things, and the at some point somebody gets selfish. That's sort of innately life. You can't live without literally eating something else. So you have to keep a close eye on things. But the fun part for authors, I feel, is that when you have a system, there's a whole bunch of levers that you can just push and pull for. Let's make, this character more corrupt, but he's a vital part of the government. But if he wasn't bribing somebody, this, that, or the other wouldn't work. Or this person is like the best individual. He's so generous. He's such a great guy, and he is absolutely terrible because our neighbors are these barbarians who only respect strength. So there's all sorts of fun little levers you can pull, personality types and roles, that I think really is sort of the bread and butter of political structure.
Oh,
Can
absolutely.
I jump in and cut Rachel off again?
Please do. Please.
Y'all
I don't mean to be mean, Rachel.
y'all have read Stormlight, right? I mean, pretty much. There's a character, the guy who had like the grand vision, right? And I don't know how far anyone's gotten in the series, but the decisions this motherfucker makes, he is so brutal, and you can't forgive what he's done. He's like committed multiple genocides and just like ruined cities and watched it all burn. And he's also a sweet guy, and he's trying really hard to save everyone. And it's fucking wild how we see what power and good intentions can do, and what at that point what is good and what is bad. And that is some 3 dimensions right there. That was some of Brandon's best works.
Yeah, the end justifies the means.
Excuse me.
Okay.
So I have a cold, so I'm trying to fight it, but I'm not doing very well.
You're okay, Rachel.
So I was going to say that a couple of things Jeff, you mentioned, I think, was the kind of the taking on the leadership role, where they fall into it not because they don't want to, but they end up serving as a mediator. Maybe they had a group of people say, you know, it's best if you do it, and it's because they're the sound of reason amongst the group, so they're kind of forced to lead them. But also you can have like a weakling, and they've been chosen by the gods, and it's something maybe that they've always wanted, but they're starting at level 0. And so one of the things that I find interesting in that is like the tasks and the challenges that they face, and the kind of the process of that, how they kind of rise into their own leadership skills. So not only are they getting stronger, but you also see them kind of socially and kind of maybe in a sense politically getting stronger and being able to be that leader for others.
Oh, absolutely. So Stephen Landry, he brought up something that's intriguing to me, and I wanted to make sure that his question got answered. In sci-fi cyberpunk settings, would you say that corporations and economics are the equivalent of part of royalty or politics? Ooh, Jeff, you look like you're ready to answer this.
I'm yes, and I can tie this to the other question from. I'm having a brain fart on how to pronounce her name. Aoife. And sorry.
Our dear sweet Rachel's companion writer.
Yes. So one of my my favorite sci-fi book series is a book series called Poor Man's Fight. Poor Man's Fight. The next one is Rich Man's War, and the third one is Dead Man's Debt. And then there's 5 and 6. And it's my favorite because it's not only the smart character has to learn to survive the military and help everybody, but it's also the world, the setup is in the sci-fi universe. It's the future. The humanity is all over the place. Different systems of government are now for each sort of solar system, and it all sort of is connected by the Union, which had to be formed after war with aliens, but nobody wants to be part of the Union. It's basically the United Nations, but in space, kind of a thing. But the crux of this whole story is that there are mega corporations that own primary debt. So the debt that each solar system government had to take on to terraform the planets, to make everything, and basically this whole sort of universe runs on debt. The key thing that starts everything is that in this universe, children, once they turn 18, they all take a test, and it's called the test. And how well you do determines how much money you owe the companies. The idea is that if you're really smart, you don't owe anything. But if you didn't learn anything, if you wasted your 12 years in school, which nobody was paying for, then you owe like $100,000, possibly even more. You have to take out more loans for longevity treatments, for going to college, this and that. So the question of corporations and economics are the equivalent of royalty politics, I would say yes, because at that point, when you're talking about such a vast distance, and it's too expensive for any one government to take on the economy tasks, then the megacorps take on and they become their own government essentially. One of the big plot points is that they sort of change the rules slightly. So now the main company has crossed the line and now they are forced to become a government and they have to scramble and figure all that out.
What you're talking about there reminds me of another book by Peter F. Hamilton, I think it is, called Fallen Dragon. It might be Peter
Yes,
F.
I think
Hamilton.
so.
Yeah, it's the basis of this is very, very similar to that in that the cost of setting up these colonies costs an absolute bomb. So, there's debt involved, debt owed to the setup civilization, and then these asset recovery teams are sent out. But it is Peter F. Hamilton, yeah, are sent out by these governments to recover assets, which is absolutely anything that they can strip and steal from the colonies. So you have like 10 years of the colony getting itself back on its feet and being okay, and then the next asset strip happens, and all these soldiers come out, rip the place apart, and fuck off again. And having that, it's just made me think so much of that. So you've read this, haven't you, Carl?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book. If nobody's read it, it's
absolutely incredible. All right.
Just to quickly say as well, though, yes, I do agree with Stephen there. Just off on a random tangent.
Oh, absolutely. And it's okay if you don't have a response. It's okay. But go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just gonna add just very briefly, like thinking about so my son plays a game called Lethal Company, and that one has a bunch of corporations. It's basically corporations, but it talks about leading into capitalism and things, using interns or prisoners to make profits off of them, from what I've seen on it. So.
Yeah, I'll just say that Cyberpunk, I guess it depends on which version, but I've never read or seen Cyberpunk that's not also dystopian. And because of that, and tech is involved, and corporations just seem pretty ubiquitous and part of the landscape. But yeah, then to me, sometimes it still breaks down to aesthetics because you're just talking about a structure and an organization that has power and exercises it. It's sort of like how they're controlling you. Either they control you by your faith or magic or debt, right? Like a bunch of indentures is like the entire populace. That feels pretty cyberpunk to me. And then you have to work 17 years until your wristband comes off, and then you can enter the free market, but then you get your ass handed to you and then you're back in the mine. So yeah. In fact, hang on, I'll plug Norton on this one. Ryan does some really cool economics in his book. His are pretty I would call them power fantasy economics because the main character's got it all, and he can just make some fucking money quickly, which is really fun to read. But yeah, Brian's Quest Academy, right? Yeah, I got the name right. Silver. It's really good.
Yes, absolutely incredible. So, like Jeff had said, we had a question come in from Aoife. Any favorite books, movies, music on power plays, politics, government, and what stood out about it?
I think I've covered most of mine when I've been giving my answers there, but I would add one game to it, which is the 90s game Syndicate Wars. Syndicate. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Sorry.
Why they haven't made a modern version of that, I don't know. But if you played that, you know it, and you know how dark and twisted that was. It was brilliant. Another possible one would be Peter F. Hamilton again. If anybody hasn't read much of Peter F. Hamilton's stuff, it is wonderful. The Dreaming Void says, actually, no, the Reality Dysfunction. Start with that one for a series of 3 books. It's sci-fi, but the way that the governments are structured in this is wonderful, and the way that the corporations run through it. I won't spoil anything for you, but hell of a series.
Absolutely.
It's a little on the nose, but like Song of Fire and Ice. I got so mad at book 4 when he's like, let's fuck off the whole series by splitting it in 2. And it just, whatever. But books 1 through 3 are masterpieces, and the whole world is amazing. And it is like it's just a study in how to write intrigue, politics, political power play bullshit. It's just constant, and it's brutal. And it also, I think he does, the best part he does is showing how feudal it is. Like no one is really getting ahead and rocking it, which is sort of what happened in medieval Europe, right? Like the War of Roses, just like, y'all remember
Yeah, we were there.
Once more into the breach, that famous speech, right? The battle of like in Henry, the Shakespeare play, Henry V, Henry IV, one of the fucking Henrys. It's a really good play. As soon as they won that battle, they just lost power again the next time they fought the French. So it just goes back. The Battle of Agincourt, it's this epic win. They fucking lose again shortly after. There's no win-win. It's just constant back and forth.
What's the phrase? No revolutionary ever gets to live long enough to enjoy the revolution. Because whoever starts up the revolution is always idealistic, and they're always killed off by somebody else to take over.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. All right. So this was supposed to be fun, and I really wanted it to be fun, but government is a serious conversation, and it's tough. But at the same time, there is always going to be that one stupid idiot that somehow gets put into the mix, and he's just not meant for it, but he's the best choice for it, because as much as he is not meant for it, and he's definitely not going to do great at start. I mean, we can definitely say this when it comes to Richter or in the land. I mean, he screws up so many flippin' times. It turns out that they tend to be the best choice for that, because in the end, they care about it, and they want their people to survive, not just because they're trying to take over the government, but because they're just trying to give their people a safe place to land.
It was fun, Kyle. We did a good job. I have to be cunty. I'm just living up to my reputation.
No, you're absolutely right.
My ADHD was making me wiggle. I did a stick and poke tattoo while we were talking. It was great.
Awesome.
To be fair, I mean, I've got to hold my hand up here. I did literally sign up for it because I saw a Monty Python quote, and I was like, eh. And on me, that's on me. I should have read the actual rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it. I was like, I want to moderate this so bad because it's going to be funny. And then I read it and I'm like, okay, going to find a way to make this enjoyable. I promise. But this has been genius. Like, all 4 of you have such incredible perspectives when it comes to government. Like, Jeff, I was not expecting.
The sticks are coming out again. The boys are showing
from
up.
you, so you just made me happy.
There was a request for it.
Rachel, what's happening?
Yeah, it's true. So
I need to get mine out again.
I know that I gotta ask this. I need to know what projects you guys have coming up. We want to hear the wonders that you guys have in those beautiful brains of yours. So I'm going to start with Rose because she's just amazing.
I'm working on a project. It's been kicking my ass a little bit, but I've got a deadline, so it's pushing. It's called Remnant Mage. It's going to be another book 1. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to drop book 1 and 2 before I jump back into First Fist for First Fist 3. So I'm pushing really hard on that pen name and kind of enjoying it. But Remnant Mage is going to be like progression fantasy and necromancer minus the flesh. So it's not all fleshy and zombie. I just don't like the zombie aesthetics. I just want it to be spirits and power and badass shit like that. So very cool.
I can appreciate that.
And you can find me
Rachel?
online and stuff.
Oh, go ahead. Rachel, introduce yourself and Aoife, because you
Yeah.
two are a dual team. We have to have you both.
Yeah, and I will say earlier, I went off screen whenever the swords were coming out, so because I dying laughing. So yes, I'm Rachel A. Cooper. I co-author with Aoife Y, and we're currently writing a Titan's Core, which is dropping on Royal Road, 2 chapters a week. You can find us on Facebook, Twitch. We have Discord. And I think I'm really looking forward to this. It will be planned to be published next year with Legion, so we're looking forward to that.
All right, we're gonna hop to Jeff.
All right. I've got 2 books on Row Road that are first draft done. I've got my Mecha Dungeon Apocalypse, which is a sci-fi dungeon core with giant robots, and I'm pushing myself to finish by the end of the month. Get that out to a couple of publishers like Legion, see what they think. I've been saying that for a year. And then the other one is my first grim, dark urban fantasy, and that's actually where this sword is from. Since the main character will get this. Also, I just because I carved this in real life, this is super easy to just throw around. This thing is heavy as crap.
Oh, I'm sure.
So,
I have
but
no doubt.
You can use this as like a bayonet and a two-handed, so that's kind of cool. So that'll affect the writing. So I will be doing those and then moving on to a second Hungry Dungeon with cakes, crisps, and crumbles.
Yes. Awesome.
As you do. Hungry Dungeon. So if you know anything about me, guys, I'm Jez Caggio. As I said earlier on, I write very, very dark stuff. At the moment, I've got book 6 of Rise of Mankind, Age of Glass, released about a month ago now. I've got book 7, which is Age of Expansion, releasing in just under 2 weeks. And then I'm working at the moment on book 8, which is Age of Conquest, which has that whole situation I mentioned before, and a hell of a lot more. I got about 42,000 words in that this week, so that was a good week. And
Very nice.
The last couple of weeks haven't been like that, and the rest of the weeks won't be like that, but this got me a lot back on track. So yeah, that's where I am. That'll probably be out about February, with audioed for book 6 dropping about February, book 7 dropping March, April, and book 8 dropping April, May.
All right, so we don't have a lot of time left, but I am going to ask for one more thing from each of you. What is one book that you have read recently or that you've read that you aren't seeing enough fans and talk about, and they should be? So, Rex. Just one. Just
Poor
one.
man's fight. I said it earlier.
I just started one, so I'm only in the beginning of it. Climbing the Dragon, and it's probably been around for a while, but I had only just heard of it. By Han
That
Young
sounds
Yang.
so good.
It also sounds a little spicy. It depends on how you read that.
Yeah, it does sound really good right now.
I can't think of one right now, but one that I enjoyed a long while back was Monsters and Legends by Ivan Cal. It doesn't get a lot of recs, but it has one of the best systems and a ton of that, like what happens with power and politics play with it.
Nice.
For me, it's something that everybody knows, I'm sure. It's Azarin Thela. I recently finished Azarin Thela 4. Really enjoyed it. Brilliant series. Mostly because Ilya just beats the crap out of everything. straightforward, A to B. There's a monster in my way, I'm going to smack it.
So much punching.
Yeah, so much punching. I know you like that.
So much punching. All right, so I have to thank all four of you. Thank you for making this panel amazing and being there for me. Like, you guys are my heroes, and hopefully someday I hope to be one of you. But until that day, just know you're in my hearts, and I will continually read your books because you make me happy. So we're gonna do the awkward wave of bye, but we love you, Lit RPG World.